Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm now 28, living in Australia and trying to get a grip on my finances. In today's video, I wanted to go over my strategy for separating out my money. Now, I know that the YNAB philosophy basically means that you can have one account and that's enough and everything has a job, and so there's no need for multiple accounts. But I've been thinking about what's going to work for me to separate out my money in a physical sense so that I am not dipping in and dipping over into other accounts. Although I do consult my budget regularly when I'm making purchases, I'm just finding that I need a physical barrier as well. So what I'm going to do today is go over these different accounts and where they're set up and how they're set up and what they're for and how this is translating into my budgets with all these new little icons you can see here. So let's jump right in. Leave your comments and questions down below and we'll get started. So basically what I've done is with my bank, I have these three accounts. So my variable expenses, my living expenses, and my savings account. They're all with the same bank, but these two, living expenses and variable expenses, both have cards or debit cards attached to them. So I can physically go and use them in a shop or online to make purchases. So what I wanted to do, because I was finding this living expenses number was giving me an inflated sense of what I have available to cover my living expenses, I wanted to use this little icon, I guess, code system to tell me where this money is sitting. So basically, I want my variable expenses with all of these little flyaway dollar signs to sit in this account. And that way I know kind of my day-to-day spending I can use on this one card and not be worried that I am dipping into this living expenses amount. And the other thing I was worried about with just one account is the amount of money sitting in there and the possible implications if my card is stolen or lost or expires for whatever reason, or I'm a victim of fraud. So it was making me a little bit nervous. So basically the whole thing is that I want to keep obviously my month ahead and my automatic expenses that come out for my living situation in this one account. So things like, I'll show you here, my debt transactions, my fixed expenses, which a lot of this is auto deducted. Also, any money that my housemate will be giving me will sit in this account as well as it relates to these fixed expenses, as well as some of my true expenses, which are bigger amounts that I don't really want to get confused, but also they're not really savings. So I'd rather them sit in this living expenses account. So things like my credentials, my car registration, all that kind of good stuff. So next up in my variable expenses, I basically classify this as anything that I would kind of do day-to-day spending on. And my philosophy being that I can just leave this card that corresponds with this at home and use it to pay my bills and things like that. And then this different card will pull from these other like variable expenses. So my day-to-day shopping and my fuel and things like that, as well as some of these memberships that are smaller amounts and they're coming up a bit more regularly that I don't want to move into savings. Things like my health and well-being, this category here for my sport, anything to do with my house, my fun stuff, my spending, my gifts and giving, as well as my travel and trips. Although these are larger amounts, I don't want them sitting in this living expenses because they are variable expenses to me. And so I just want to be able to have one card where I can just spend from and not have to worry about dipping into money that's been put aside for my day-to-day living expenses or my savings. And then the third one here is my savings account with the same bank. I earn bonus interest if this keeps going up and up and up. And so basically I wanted to actively put money into this and not withdraw from this so that I can keep getting that bonus interest, which is about 3.5% every month that I increase. So what's going to be sitting in this savings account are things like my emergency fund, as well as my 100 envelopes challenge and my home deposit that I'm slowly building up. I've done it this way because these things that are not things that I want to pull out of there, and possibly when I have more defined savings goals, they'll also go in there. So like this 100 envelopes challenge, once it's done, I'll reallocate that to a goal that sits within this savings account. So the way that I'm going to determine how much money should be in each account, I will be doing a trick that I believe it was Budgets with Grace showed me, or showed the internet, and I watched it. And basically that is going through and highlighting all of the ones with a particular symbol. In this case, it is these 3 sections with a calendar we'll start with, and that should be sitting here in this living expenses. So if I highlight, and the credit cards, but I don't know how to add a calendar to this. It won't let me kind of edit the heading. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight, go into the current month, and highlight all of these. And any of these ones that have a calendar next to it. Just scroll through and see if there's anything else. So basically, this living expenses account should have $3,173 in it. So what I would now do is I would keep track of that number, and then basically make sure that at the end of all of my transferring to these different accounts, this is the number that is remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for this variable expenses and see how much money I should have in my account there. So in that particular account, under my variable expenses, I should have $1,355.70. And so what I would do is I'd put a transaction in from living expenses into variable expenses, and that I'll do that in real life as well, and then they should reflect what I have in each of those. And just for the sake of it, while we're here, I'll look into these categories and see what the totals are that I should have in my savings account. And we can see that's $960, and that is correct, because I did do this earlier to make sure that I had hit that bonus interest requirements. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and make those transfers and make sure that this all lines up, and do that in real life. Perfect. So now I can see here that this is the amount that we mentioned before that should be in my living expenses, and then this is the amount that should be in my variable expenses card. And what I'll do now is go and do that in real life and make sure that my real accounts reflect this. And I really think this is going to help me to better kind of separate things out and have a bit of peace of mind in terms of the amount of money that's sitting in these areas. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. Happy to hear any feedback about this, whether you find this too complicating or whether it's a waste of time or whether you think it's a good idea. Let me know down below. But otherwise, I hope you have an awesome day. I am getting my paycheck this week, so you can look forward to a budget with me in my next video. Thanks, guys.